what goes on outside your classroom. If you could identify one thing that you think your students need when they step outside the door of your classroom that your institution should be providing, what should that be? That would make the most difference.
I might say, after they leave, step outside my classroom in terms of our campus and college, is I think they need to experience the culture of the campus. And what that means is that we as a group, we as the educators of Paradise Valley Community College, all have a common vision. I do believe that's true for my campus. I am an advocate and truly blessed to work among these people. But from the person that tells the students where they can park, to the architect and the committee that created our Center for the Performing Arts, to the courses that are offered, that are not offered, to the people who run our honors program, to our faculty who take the students on archaeological digs, to our faculty member who put together our we have a cadaver lab, to the, all of it, and the students will come to me and say, this is a great place. And I say to them, yes. But, as I've said over and over and over again, since winning this award, since being given this award, that good teaching doesn't happen in a vacuum. I was able to do the things I wanted to do on my campus, in the campus and within the campus community, because everybody supported that common vision. And that, that may seem really obvious, it seems obvious to me, but it takes a great amount of effort and leadership and everybody to be on the same page. But without that culture, I think that you are this, you're this tiny, tiny note in this whirlwind of stuff that we call education. And while I think that that's important, it's so much better when we have an orchestra instead of just one little simple thing.
My answer goes back to, I think, was the initial question about the last lecture, because I didn't have an opportunity to answer the last lecture question, and I think mine would be, if I could muster it out, the secret to successful living. And I think I found the answer, and it was on your campus yesterday. It was a flag hanging outside the Intramural Fields. Maybe you've seen it. It simply said, USF, make an impact. I think that's the secret. If we were all out there making an impact, and what I wrote down is that my hope is that we are inspiring students to make the world a better place, whether it's through chemistry, through engineering, through the creative arts, through psychology and other social sciences. Our students, we should be inspiring students to get out there and make the world a better place, and we can sleep at night.
Hi, I'm Travis Thompson, and I'm an administrator within undergraduate studies and also a doctoral candidate here at the University of South Florida. And I'd like to draw on your answer by fulfilling both roles. So if we take learning to be a creative enterprise that's process-based and also one that involves change, what are some of the ways that you balance the tensions of fostering creative spaces while also balancing concrete, political, geographical, physical realities or settings?
You guys are up, Rosa and I.
Yeah, we did.
The term creative was huge.
What, me?
This is your thing.
Okay, let me paraphrase, and this is what I do when I don't understand a student. Let me say what I think you were asking me, and you can tell me if I'm right or not. How do you balance the practical with the theoretical? Is that what I'm hearing?
A little bit of that.
Okay. You wanna?
So, well, learning, if we take learning, maybe not just for students, but also learning as a professor in
Oh.
the practical setting of a classroom, how do you balance the tension of creating creative spaces for transformative learning to take place, but within what are often concrete, political,
Oh.
or physical settings?
I do feel, I mean, everything we're moving toward, all the, what we call pedagogies of engagement, service learning or community engagement, authentic practice in terms of internship and undergraduate research, everything authentic. We get out there in the real world, and so the classroom, we're not limited to the classroom space is the answer.
As a writer, and working with my other fine arts faculty, we're working artists, and I think that makes a really big difference in teaching my students in creative writing, because I come to the classroom and say, look, you know, some of these challenges I am putting to you, I am currently engaged in. And I do a lot of work on a national level within my professional organization and try to bring back to the campus, whether it's in the form of opportunities or speakers or information or scholarship, you know, to my students. So they feel, well, at least I hope they feel connected to this larger scope. And our campus is really very proactive in creating opportunities that are linked to very specific course content. You know, as you said, internships, but other things as well. So it's kind of like, as you were saying, for a holistic approach. I think there's something that the students respect when I say, you know, I know how you feel because I also don't have enough time. You know, or I've just come back from a postdoc workshop, so I understand what it's like to be sitting there in the classroom and having people talk about my work, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that kind of raises the bar a little bit in terms of comfort and trust, but also in terms of challenging them. You know, I hope that answers some of your question.
I think you're right, though. I think that not all creative pedagogies lead to the benchmarks and the successes that you want. Just because it's new doesn't mean it's good. And hopefully, if you find out that it's not effective, you'll go a different direction. But you know, I visited the your tutoring center today, and you know, they have a creative space there, and they have some benchmarks to document that they are in fact doing what they say they're doing. They are increasing grades or passing grades by 15% over the years by using this model. So you have to really assess. It goes back to the self-reflection. Just because you did it doesn't mean that you should do it again because the work has been done one time. It's easier to do it the second time. You've got to really assess whether it's worked or not. And like I said, not every idea they're good, but not every idea will lead to the teaching of your learning objectives, the benchmarks that you or your university or future employers have set on your students. So you sometimes have to do a pivot, if you will, and go in a different direction after you assess that.
I'm baffled by the question, so I want to do the best I can. I'll give a simple example. There was a memo which was sent in our university that please don't change the learning spaces like moving to chairs and things like that, because why waste the fire code? If somebody can solve that problem, I think we have one answer to this question.
It's Roger Brindley, I'm a faculty member in college education, and I wanted to bounce off my colleague Sherman's question a minute ago. But Todd, I heard earlier in the afternoon you talk about the idea of I wish I had known. Tell some of my colleagues as a young professor to be quiet, straight out of the way, I'm coming through. Lois, you just articulate the vision of a utopian campus, whether you meant to or not. It sounded fantastic. Sherman asked the question about students. I want to ask the question about your faculty colleagues. How does your teaching go outside of your teaching environment and affect your faculty colleagues around you? How have you been able, perhaps you can tell us a process, a structure, or a story that illustrates how you've been able to sort of help your colleagues come on this ride with you to help with the betterment of the broader student population?
I'll take the easy part. Maybe I'll give you the hard part. I haven't figured out necessarily how to do that with the more senior and veteran faculty, but through good mentoring, I think you really can instill these good practices on newer faculty. So I've been involved in setting up a mentoring program at my institution where we do co-teaching, and it's a formal mentoring that new faculty are required to be involved in. And I think we have gone a long way in showing them good traits, discussing good teaching skills. So that's kind of the easier one, I think, is the younger faculty, the junior faculty. I'll be honest, I have the same question. If there's time, I might throw it out to the collective audience on how you change that, or you shift paradigm in educators' minds who have been doing it the way they've been doing it for a long time. Resistance to change. I don't have an answer for that, but if any of the collective audience does, I'd love to hear it.
I just had I'm 23 years in, something like that, and just recently finally had that experience. And the only reason I'm here among my colleagues is that I've had the fortunate opportunity to have some research that was of real interest to people across the country. So I've been able to give faculty development workshops at 70 institutions or something like that, and do all kinds of conference keynotes and things. But even more important is that at my own institution, we were able to do a course redesign project that involved about a third of our faculty. And we used, as I said earlier, Judith Blumberg's learning-centered teaching workbook. And over the course of a semester, meeting pretty much every other week in small groups, we all redesigned our courses. So now I see on our campus, and our campus was a campus that I would have never said we would have a majority of our faculty on board with teaching that was learning-centered or student-centered. We had a lot of faculty resistance. It was one of those institutions where people prided themselves on students failing and so forth. Complete change in and it's what I would call a tipping point sort of thing. Years ago, just 10 years ago, you kind of were looked down upon if you were engaging, if you were good at what you did. Today, it's the exact opposite. There is now social pressure for those people who are resisting. And so I think it's a social movement, and it can't be created by your administrators, it can be supported by your administrators, but it has to be a grassroots movement created by you. And so I'm a huge advocate of what people like Kevin do in the centers to facilitate that as well. But it has to be faculty, and I would say strategically engaging faculty role models and leaders within each of the departments to create, and then other faculty see how that has an impact on students. And it can happen, and for us it happened in less than a couple of years. Just took off once we really got a good group of faculty voted. But I will say, when I'm speaking on other campuses, I'll say hiring practices are critical. That we're still making the mistake of hiring people who don't get, yes, we want you to be researchers and scholars, but we want you to be teacher scholars. So we need to be hiring the right people and making it clear up front what our expectations are, that this is a campus where we are devoted to students and student success as well as our research.
Christy, go ahead.
On my campus, we, the fine arts people, we do a lot of collaborative work together. We really like each other a lot, and so that makes it kind of wonderful. For example, I'm running a jazz opera with my colleague who's a composer. The visual art surrounds his work with our percussionists. So that's been really wonderful. But over on the other side of campus, our science colleagues and so forth, we've made efforts. Well, one of the things I did, quite simply, was walk across campus and start talking to them and inviting them to certain events that we had. But over and above, something I created a couple of years ago, I think was very effective in kind of bringing us all together on the same page. I went to our faculty senate and proposed that contest, which was open to everybody. It had to be a student who was enrolled or is enrolled in our campus. It had to be an essay that was about a full-time person, because it was full-time faculty senate. And then we've got an outside judge. We judged the contest. I put it together in a little booklet. And then what I did was I excerpted parts of it and sent out, and I did it across disciplines, so nobody felt that, we had economics or, Spanish or whatever. And sent it out and said, this is what your students are saying about you. I archived it, and also I made like 20 copies and gave it to our governing board, because I know that they don't know what we do. So that was really and now they've picked it, there was a lot of work to do, but that was the kind of way, a positive way of saying, hey, look at where you work, and look how wonderful these teachers are, and look at your colleagues, and aren't you proud of yourselves? And I want to say this as we're coming towards the end of today, that first of all, thank you, my colleagues, but thank you, all of you, for coming and for your hospitality. And if I can say one thing, if I can end by just saying one thing, is that what you do, what we do, matters. If you come out with one thing, if you remember nothing that I've said to you, say, what we do matters. I don't care what anybody says to you. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care how much money we have, we don't have. We're going to do it, and it counts, and it matters, and this is how you change the world. Even though my husband says I'm an idealist. But I say to him, but if nobody's out there, fighting the good fight, then how do you have to change anything? So.
We have time for one final question, and it's going to come from a very important person. And in my summing up, I'll explain why this person is so important.
Monica's concerned.
Yeah. You know something I don't? My question has to do with, I'm from the library, by the way. Monica knows why I'm from the library. And my question has to do with books, but a different sort of book, and that is the textbook. It used to be the students would have bragging rights if they were senior, they'd never come to the library. Now they have bragging rights when they say, I got 6 A's and I never had to buy my textbook. My question is, what do you consider to be the future of the textbook and its value in teaching and learning now and forward?
Not much to say, Bob Sam.
I'm glad that you asked the question, because I don't answer to it. Or at least I think that I don't answer to it. I think it's going to come more as packages as opposed to just the textbook itself. You're going to have multimedia content in the textbook. You're going to have adaptive learning taking place, where you're asking questions right after certain sections of the chapter, and be able to see that maybe the student needs to take a different direction, maybe it needs to be pointed towards a different part of the chapter. So those are my views in that, but I think it's a very difficult thing to do, especially the way the publishers are trying to approach this particular problem, where they're not giving full access to the books for a long period of time. Find time again that you can only use the e-book for one semester, and if it's a prerequisite for another class, they cannot use it, they have to buy it again. So I think that model has to change. But I see a lot of positives in the way the e-books are now being made in terms of annotations. Students can talk to each other, they can make their own annotations, and their fellow students can see these annotations, the teacher can see these annotations. So if we have all the interaction taking place within the textbook itself, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
I think you're right. You do have the right answer there, and it's just building off what you said. It's what I said about the future classroom as well. It's mixed modalities. There's not one right thing. And even a textbook, even in the past, not all students learned well from the textbooks, but some really did learn well. So I think you're right. There's going to be a shift to a holistic multimedia approach, where I think the textbook is still going to have some, if not reference value to the students, but it's going to be supplemented with multimedia and other technologies to kind of resonate, I think, with the classroom of the future.
Yeah, to that I would add, information literacy becomes even more critical now than ever before, and will continue to be critical, so that we're not just using textbooks as one source for students, but we're helping them to find sources from articles and other things all over to figure out which sources are accurate and legitimate and all of these things. That becomes even a greater challenge. But I see it as becoming much more exploratory, and as you said, the textbook's moving into more of a multimedia, not a physical textbook, is, although I'm a firm believer in that, the solid, the firm book will still exist as we know it, and but that things will change, continue to change, I guess.
As a writer, I have a fondness for grant-based. I do think that our definition of a textbook is going to change.
In the book.
Oh, as I was sitting in the Smart Lab today, I was thinking that it would be such a great application to use, I know it would be like a gazillion of dollars, but, to use that as a textbook, to have it in 3D, like here you are actually listening to Socrates or listening to Ansex, how big that, or we were talking before to maybe do imaging of the brain as the students are in their flow of the creative process. How terrific would that be, Or maybe even talk back to, the writer, have the writer, how great would that? So I think our definition is going to change, but I just happen to think that the print isn't going to go away because it's just so nice.
Well, on that point, Monica, you're probably wondering why you are so special. And it really comes back to a comment that Christy shared earlier, and that is that student success is a movement. And it's a conversation that Paul, Purcell, and I have had, and others have had over the years, that we realize from the outset that this isn't something that you can impose on a community. The community has to own this. So the reason why I said Monica is so important, she said I'm a librarian. She's much more than a librarian. We have a remarkably talented team of student affairs leaders here this afternoon. You're not privileged to know who everyone is in the audience. Our academic advisors, our graduate school, undergraduate studies, instructional and information technology. It's all of you that make this happen. I was particularly intrigued by the conversation you were having about content acquisition, knowledge acquisition, and skill and competency development. We're hearing through our Career Center today that employers are as interested in graduates that leave the University of South Florida with an understanding of how to promote collaboration, how to work in teams, in partnership with one another, problem-solving skills, broadly grit, not specifically in engineering. By the way, the question that mystified you came from a graduate of the College of Engineering. It may have mystified you, perhaps it shouldn't have surprised you. But we'll coach him next time.
No, I think I need to be coached.
But in closing, and I do have to wrap this up very, very quickly because I'm already late for a faculty senate meeting, and you know what that means for the provost, who knows if I've still got a job at the moment. But in all seriousness, this has been a session that many of us will remember for many, many years. Thank you so much for generously giving of your time, your wisdom, your experience, in helping us better shape a future for students at the University of South Florida. We're very, very proud of what we've accomplished in a relatively short time here. We're certainly not satisfied, and we realize there's work yet to be done. There's plenty of refreshments on the side here at the back for the introverts who are in the audience. You have an opportunity to continue the conversation with our guests for a little while. But most particularly, I want to thank you for taking your time and demonstrating to the USF community how important student success is to you. Thank you.